It was a quiet Texas afternoon, the kind of day where nothing seems possible. Until a pink bicycle lies abandoned, a 9-year-old girl vanishes in broad daylight, and no one knows where she went. In the blink of an eye, a community's worst nightmare begins, and a mystery that would haunt a nation unfolds. No witnesses, no license plate, no trace. Police scramble. Tips flood in. And as the hours pass, the horrifying truth becomes clear. This is no ordinary disappearance. This is the abduction of Amber Hagerman, and the world will never be the same. On a calm Saturday afternoon, January 13, 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman pedaled her pink bicycle across her grandmother's neighborhood in Arlington, Texas. It was the kind of day that felt safe, familiar, perfectly ordinary. The kind of day no one realizes will become history. Amber, a shy but determined fourth grader, had a habit of doing everything with a sense of purpose. She'd been riding with her little brother Ricky, but when he turned back home, Amber kept going, toward the abandoned grocery store at the end of the block. A place where kids like to play, though adults warned them not to. Moments later, a scream tore through that quiet air. A retired man named Jim Keffer, watching from his backyard, saw a black pickup truck pull up. He saw a man jump out. He saw Amber grabbed, lifted, and forced into the vehicle as she kicked and fought. The entire abduction lasted less than 10 seconds. But in 1996, suburban Texas was not built to handle something like this. Within minutes, Amber's family rushed to the scene, her mother Donna, panicked and shaking, refusing to believe what she was hearing. It was broad daylight, in a neighborhood full of people. And somehow, Amber was gone. Police arrived within minutes, but what they found chilled them. A single bicycle. A single witness. A single direction of escape. Nothing else. America in 1996 still held onto the innocence of earlier decades. Neighborhoods trusted each other, children played outside, and kidnappings were seen as rare tragedies shown on late-night news, not something that happened in your own zip code. Police weren't prepared. The media wasn't ready. And the public had no warning system. In 1996, there was no Amber Alert. No emergency broadcast. No nation watching. The kidnapping stunned the local community, and within hours, Amber Hagerman became the center of one of the most intense child abduction searches in Texas history. But what investigators didn't know is that the next 96 hours would lead them into a mystery so dark, so sudden, and so unexplained, that almost 3 decades later, it still haunts them. In the first hours after Amber's disappearance, Arlington police realized something chilling. They were already behind. The kidnapper had taken Amber in less than a minute, and vanished into a city of over 300,000 people without leaving a trace. Detectives locked down the scene, marking tire impressions, shoe prints, and the location of Amber's bicycle. But the evidence was thin, painfully thin. Witness Jim Keffer gave the only detailed description. A black pickup truck. Possibly full-size, early 1980s or early 1990s. Single male driver. White or Hispanic. Medium build. But he couldn't give a license plate or a full face. In crimes like this, faces are everything. By nightfall, hundreds of volunteers were combing fields, drainage ditches, alleys, and creek beds. Arlington hadn't seen a mobilization like this in years. Amber's mother, Donna Whitson, made desperate pleas on TV. She's just 9 years old. Please, whoever has her, bring her home. Her voice cracked on the air. Millions would later remember that sound. Local stations ran Amber's story every hour. But technology in 1996 was painfully slow compared to today. There were no instant push alerts, no national blast messages, no unified system to signal an urgent child abduction. Police phones rang non-stop. Most calls were useless, some misleading, a few pure hoaxes. And then, the silence began. Hours turned into days. Leads dried up. The description of the pickup truck led nowhere. Every time police chased a sighting, by the time they arrived, the truck was gone. Or it never existed. Search teams expanded the radius. Creeks, parks, wooded areas. Helicopters scanned fields. Nothing. It was as if the kidnapper had lifted Amber straight out of the world. At the same time, a disturbing pattern became clear. The kidnapper had waited for the moment Ricky left. He had watched. He had chosen the exact second Amber was alone. This wasn't random. It was opportunistic. Maybe even a predator familiar with the area. On January 17th, 4 days after the abduction, a man walking his dog spotted something in a creek behind an apartment complex, 5 miles from the abduction site. He approached slowly. Then he saw the small body. It was Amber. She had been murdered, placed in water, possibly washed downstream by recent rain. And just like that, the frantic search turned into an investigation. The hope turned into grief, and the silence turned into anger. The medical examiner found Amber was kept alive for at least 2 days. She had injuries indicating she was killed shortly before discovery. No usable DNA. No vehicle fibers. No trace evidence connecting to any suspect. It was a forensic dead end. Police publicly admitted they had no strong suspects. Behind the scenes, frustration grew. They knew the clock was ticking. Child abduction killers usually strike again. But the killer of Amber Hagerman did not. Which made him even harder to find. Reporters demanded answers. Politicians wanted results. Amber's family fell into unimaginable grief. And for investigators, something wasn't adding up. There was a gap in the timeline, a detail in the witness statement, and a disturbing possibility no one wanted to consider. The case was about to shift, not because of evidence, but because of the questions no one could ignore anymore. Because in the days after Amber's murder, Arlington detectives realized something horrifying. They had more theories than suspects, more questions than answers, and almost nothing that pointed to a single man. The FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team examined the crime. Their conclusion was chilling. The kidnapper was an adult male, likely familiar with the neighborhood, comfortable enough to act in daylight, appeared impulsive, but acted with practiced speed, probably lived or worked within a few miles. This wasn't a random drifter. This was a predator who blended in. Jim Keffer, the lone eyewitness, was cooperative, sincere, and devastated he couldn't give more detail. But detectives noticed something. His description kept shifting. Not intentionally, but memory under stress is fragile. One moment he remembered a full-sized black pickup. Another, it might have been mid-sized. Sometimes he was sure the headlights were rectangular. Other times, round. Every version widened the suspect pool instead of narrowing it. In the end, detectives admitted privately that Keffer's testimony was useful but unreliable. A haunting flaw in the investigation. Detectives next focused on known sex offenders and predators in Arlington and neighboring cities. The list was longer than they expected. Dozens were questioned. Some had shaky alibis, others had airtight ones. A few seemed promising, until lab results returned. No match. No fibers. No prints. No witness confirmation. But one man, a quiet mechanic with a history of violence toward minors, drew temporary attention. He lived only 2 miles from the site. He denied everything, passed a polygraph, and had co-workers confirming he was at the shop. Another dead end. Then came the strangest lead of all. A prison informant claimed Amber's abduction was connected to a Mexican drug ring trafficking children across state lines. The story involved a gang operating in Fort Worth, a woman resembling Amber seen at a stash house, a possible connection to a stolen truck. It was sensational, and completely unsupported by evidence. But detectives still checked. Every house, every name, every claim. Nothing. The theory collapsed. What troubled detectives most wasn't a suspect. It was time. Amber was abducted at 3:10 p.m. Multiple witnesses saw the truck speed away. Traffic was moderate. Police were notified within minutes. Roadblocks were up fast. So how did the kidnapper escape a grid that tightened almost instantly? Detectives suspected one of two possibilities. Option 1. He lived extremely close by, close enough to disappear into a home or garage within minutes. Option 2. He kept Amber in a location already prepared. A shed. A storage unit. A basement. Somewhere he didn't need time to clear or plan. This possibility disturbed investigators the most, because it meant the abductor had thought about this before Amber. Dozens of black trucks were inspected. None matched the witness description perfectly. Some had the right shape, but wrong bumper. Some looked right, but the driver didn't fit the profile. And then there was the one truck that did match, almost perfectly, seen parked behind an abandoned warehouse the night after the abduction. When police arrived, it was gone. No plate. No trace. No follow-up sighting. That truck remains one of the most disturbing loose threads in the entire case. By early February, detectives privately documented something the public would never hear. They had a person of interest. A man who lived near the abduction site, owned a dark truck, had a record of violence, cleaned out his garage the night Amber vanished, moved away suddenly weeks later. But there was no physical evidence linking him. No witness placing him at the scene. Nothing they could charge. He was watched, questioned, then released. He moved states, changed jobs, and eventually disappeared from the system. To this day, detectives refuse to release his name. Detectives had a victim. They had a truck. They had a timeline. They had a community demanding justice. But what they didn't have was a killer. And in the vacuum of answers, the case was about to shift again. Not because of new evidence, but because of what happened when Amber's mother refused to let her daughter's death be forgotten. By February 1996, the Amber Hagerman case was collapsing under its own weight. Dozens of suspects questioned. Hundreds of tips filed. Thousands of hours spent. And still, the killer remained invisible. But while the investigation struggled, Amber's mother, Donna Whitson, refused to let silence be the final chapter. This part of the story isn't about evidence. It's about a mother who forced an entire nation to confront a brutal truth. Amber didn't have to die. Her killer didn't have to get away. And no child should ever disappear without a warning reaching every pair of eyes. Even as leads vanished, Donna appeared on TV every single day. Not to beg for closure, but to demand that no other parent suffer what she had. Donna asked a question that hit the country like a lightning strike. Why didn't anyone know Amber was taken? Why wasn't every person in this city told, instantly? No one had an answer. Not the police. Not local officials. Not broadcasters. Because in 1996, America simply had no system to alert the public when a child was kidnapped. It's hard to imagine now, but Amber died in a world without Amber Alerts. When Dallas-Fort Worth radio host Russ Martin heard Donna's frustration, he went live on air and asked, "Why don't we have an emergency broadcast system for abducted kids?" It was a question that exposed a national blind spot. Listeners flooded station lines. Parents demanded action. Lawmakers started calling. And suddenly, Amber's case was no longer just a tragedy. It was a movement. Within months, broadcasters, law enforcement, and government officials met in conference rooms, church halls, and police departments across Texas. They built a system that had never existed. A standardized alert. Instant broadcast interruptions. Rapid radio and TV mobilization. Real-time descriptions of vehicles, suspects, and victims. And they named it in honor of the little girl whose case had exposed the hole in America's emergency network. The Amber Plan. Later, the Amber Alert. For the first time in U.S. history, law enforcement accepted something bold. They needed the public's eyes. All of them. Immediately. Meanwhile, Amber's investigation was still stuck. The person of interest, detectives quietly watched. He moved away. The truck seen near the warehouse? never resurfaced. Other men questioned, cleared. The leads dried up. The file thickened. And detectives admitted what families dread most. The case was cold. But something different happened here, something rare. Cold didn't mean forgotten. Because the more time passed, the more national pressure grew to solve the case. Documentaries, cold case teams, new detectives, the story refused to fade. And though the killer was never caught, Amber's name became impossible to escape. Not because of what happened to her, but because of what changed because of her. By 2005, nearly every U.S. state had adopted Amber Alerts. By 2010, the system expanded to highway signs, phone notifications, internet blasts, wireless emergency systems. By 2024, Amber Alerts had been credited with saving over 1,200 abducted children. And every time an alert goes out, every time a phone vibrates, every time a highway sign flashes a license plate, a piece of Amber's voice returns. But what the public rarely hears is this. The detective who worked Amber's case the longest later admitted, "We were close. Closer than people know." He said the suspect they couldn't name was dangerous, clever, prepared, and possibly had harmed before. But without evidence, without surveillance cameras, DNA, or digital trails, 1996 law enforcement was fighting blind. This is the quiet tragedy behind the Amber Alert. The system that could have saved Amber came because she wasn't saved. Amber Hagerman's killer was never caught. But Amber Hagerman did something almost no victim in American history has ever done. She changed the entire country. She rewrote the way we respond to danger. She forced government, police, and media to evolve. She turned her own tragedy into a shield for children she would never meet. Nearly 3 decades later, the Amber Hagerman case remains one of America's most haunting unsolved kidnappings. A crime so fast, so precise, so silent, that detectives still struggle to understand how anyone could have pulled it off. But even today, new theories, new technology, and new investigators continue to circle around the same chilling truth. Amber's killer was not a random monster. He was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. For years, investigators have quietly returned to the same few possibilities. A local offender who blended into the neighborhood. A drifter with a record who passed through Arlington unnoticed. Someone who had abducted before, and might have done it again. A suspect who moved states just months after Amber was taken. No theory has ever fully closed the case. But one retired detective admitted, "We weren't looking for a beginner." In the 1990s, DNA evidence was primitive. Today, families find answers using advanced forensics, genealogy technology, and cold case DNA databases. The Hagerman case has been reviewed repeatedly, but no usable DNA was recovered from Amber's body. Not because the technology failed, but because the killer knew how to leave none. This is the chilling part of the story that many documentaries never touch. If the killer were caught today, it would be because of a mistake he made somewhere else. Not at the crime scene. Some investigators still believe Amber's killer lived near the Winn-Dixie parking lot. He struck too quickly. He vanished too cleanly. He knew the exact moment the street went quiet. Maybe he watched Amber before. Maybe he waited for her. Maybe he planned it. Years later, retired officers revisited old addresses. Houses with curtains drawn, garages never opened, names long forgotten. One detective said, "Someone in that neighborhood knows more than they said." There is another theory, rarely discussed publicly. A traveling predator. Someone passing through. Someone who left Arlington the same night he took Amber. Someone who avoided every camera, every witness, every trace. This theory terrifies detectives because it suggests something even darker. Amber's killer may have struck elsewhere. And without evidence, those cases might also be unsolved. Their stories forgotten. Amber's mother, Donna, still keeps her daughter's photo in a frame on her bedroom dresser. She still speaks about Amber in the present tense. She still believes someone out there knows what happened. She once said, I don't care who he is. I just want him to look me in the eyes and tell me why. Every anniversary, Donna visits a memorial at the exact spot where Amber was taken. A place now filled with flowers, candles, and written prayers for other families. More than 1,200 children have been brought home alive because of the system named after Amber. Every time an Amber Alert interrupts a radio broadcast. Every time a phone vibrates with a child's description. Every time a highway message flashes a license plate. That is her voice. Her warning. Her gift. Amber's tragedy built the world's most powerful child recovery network. She changed law enforcement. She changed broadcasting. She changed parents. She changed the country. Some stories end with justice. Some end with answers. Amber Hagerman's story ends with a question. But that question continues to protect millions of children. And somewhere out there, someone knows the truth about what happened that January afternoon. Someone remembers that black truck. Someone saw something they never reported. Someone heard a story that didn't sound like a story. Someone knows who took Amber. And investigators still say, it only takes one person to finally end this case. Amber's story changed a nation, but her case still leaves questions unanswered. If you want to uncover more mysteries, follow the investigations, and hear the stories that don't make the headlines, subscribe now, and join us as we bring truth, history, and justice to light. Don't miss a single chapter. Click that subscribe button and stay with us.